3, recording in progress. Anne, thank you very, very much for agreeing to this conversation. Because we met at the AATH, which the Association for the Application of Therapeutic Humor, back in Philadelphia in I think 2015.
Yes.
And you're a 2 times TEDx speaker.
Yes.
And you have a very interesting story, Anne. Which will I have no doubt emerge sort of during this conversation on joy. But Anne, what is joy to you?
So joy to me, I was thinking about this. It's not necessarily being happy all the time. Joy to me is the ability to find beauty even in life's not so beautiful moments and settings. That's what really gives me joy. It's easy. We were just talking earlier about going for walks in botanical gardens. It's easy for me to find joy there because it's beautiful, and flowers and gardens give me great joy. But when I'm in a third world country looking at poverty and starvation or something that's not necessarily a joyful or beautiful thing, finding the beauty in those situations, that's what really gives me joy.
Lovely. Yes. Because you have probably a unique perspective on joy because of your own life story. Do you want to sort of to comment on that at all?
Absolutely. So you mentioned in your introduction that we met at the Association for Applied and Therapeutic Humor conference in 2015. And
where you did a fantastic presentation, by the way.
Thank you.
Walked up onto the podium backwards. I remember that.
I did. I walked to the podium backwards in a bicycle helmet. Yes. And that was to demonstrate neuroplasticity, the idea that, forcing our brains to do things in different ways is what makes new connections and helps our brains to grow and stay healthy as we age. So my story behind that is a brain injury in 2011. So it's been a little over 10 years now. I fell in a bathtub in Germany and sustained a brain injury, which was diagnosed as a mild traumatic brain injury, which is kind of a silly name for it because my symptoms were anything but mild. So the type of injury I had should have healed, within 3 or 4 weeks. It should have resolved itself, but for me, it didn't. And I had a lot of long-term effects, such as short-term memory issues, aphasia, where I can't remember I can see the word, I can feel the word I want to say, but I can't get it out of my mouth. Wow. And some visual perception challenges. So those things remain with me over 10 years after that brain injury. And the connection to joy in all of that, and speaking at the Association for Applied and Therapeutic Humor conference was the idea of using neuroplasticity, using that concept that our brains are always able to rewire. I found that very joyful. I felt like a little kid. I felt like it could have been awful. It could have been like, oh, poor me, I can't do this anymore. I can't do that anymore. But I was able to turn it around and find joy in it in a playful way. So nice. I'm going to figure out a new way to do this old thing that I'm having trouble doing now because of this brain injury. And when I approached it in that way, with creativity and a sense of playfulness, it was the whole process of recovering and changing. It was like it was like this journey of discovery. And that to me is joyful. Learning is joyful. And so I felt like a child. And when I spoke at that conference in 2015, where I met you, my father, who is my humor hero, had just been admitted to a nursing home. He had a very rare form of dementia called posterior cortical atrophy, and he had just been admitted to the nursing home, where he died in 2018. But he was my joy hero, my humor hero. And even until the end, I mean, he was hilarious. He was the funniest man I know. And it was so interesting to me as we watched him decline. And even in his final days, it was really interesting to me that I was able to hold great joy and laughter along with great sadness at the same time. It was really kind of cool. And that in itself is a very bittersweet thing, but that's a joyful thing that we get to do because we're human.
Fantastic, fantastic, Anne, fantastic. I knew this was going to be a really interesting conversation, Anne. And you'll kind of answer the second question, really, because the second question is, how important is joy to you? And from everything you've been saying about your own experience and what you experienced with your father and in his decline, being able to be in contact with the joy and finding the joy and humor, and joy in difficult situations has been it's been a delight.
Yeah.
And it's been it's been something of an anchor or a rock or a way of staying afloat.
Yes.
During challenging times.
Yes.
Great. Well, wonderful. And it's just fantastic. So given your own experience, what would be your top joy tip? You're allowed to have more than one, by the way.
Oh, oh boy. How many hours do you have to talk to me about this? So my number one joy tip, we were talking about this before we started recording, is to be out in nature.
Lovely.
At least every day. And to be out in nature without electronics, right? We're always carrying our phones, we're always listening to music or listening to books or checking our social media or what. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's wonderful. I love to do that. Yep. But I find that sometimes I just have to, cut that off for a certain period of time. And when I'm out in nature, I want to be completely present for the flowers and the birds and the gardens or the parks or wherever I am, right? Yes. So we were talking earlier about botanical gardens.
Yes.
And I told you that one of my favorite things in the entire world, no matter where I travel in any country, the first thing I always do is find a botanical garden or a park.
Amazing.
And I've been to them all over the world. That's just like, it grounds me. So that I guess would be my top tip for joy, to be out in nature, in a garden, wherever, whatever nature means for you. For some people, it might be out on the water with a, fly fishing rod or whatever. But to be out there without electronics, I think connects us to nature and connects us to ourselves and to joy. I don't need my phone to have joy.
Yeah. It's lovely. So, and what I heard in what you're saying there was, it does at least sort of two things. One, it helps us be really present, and secondly, therefore, it also helps us be nice and grounded.
Yeah.
And thirdly, I might was implied when we sort of disconnect from the modern razzmatazz, it also helps us slow down a bit. If I'm not sort of reading too much into what you were saying, because the nature rhythms tend to be slower than our modern sort of high-tech razzmatazz.
Razzmatazz, yes. Absolutely.
And so,
Absolutely.
so
And
being
you're actually, you made me think of another thing
good.
when you were speaking about that. When you said razzmatazz, I was thinking about the razzmatazz of the world and how sucked up we are in it. And I always find joy. Another way I find joy, and I have a 28-year-old daughter, and I always tell her, I've always told her since she was a little girl, find one thing, at least one thing that gives you joy that you can do for a lifetime that's sustainable. Like it might be playing an instrument, right? I play the piano and I play the violin. Those things give me great joy. I've been doing piano since I was 8 years old. Knitting, that's another thing. Knitting, sewing, whatever. But it might be art for someone else, or photography, or something that is sustainable for a lifetime. Something, that one thing that you lose yourself in. Gardening also does that for me. I can go out and, have my hands in dirt for 2 hours and I have no idea how much time has gone by. That's pure joy when you lose track of time.
Yes.
So find that one or two hobby or activities or arts or whatever it is that gives you that feeling, that allows you to lose track of time and immerse yourself and be in that flow state, as they call it.
Yep.
That there is nothing more joyful, and I think that's really important. I'm a part-time adjunct professor of English at 2 schools, and I always tell my young students that you got to find that one thing. You can go out and play sports, but are you still going to be doing that when you're 90 years old? Probably not. So find that thing that you can do for a lifetime and do it often.
Such a good tip. Such a good tip. Find your thing, find your joy thing, and do it all your life.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a great tip, Anne. What a great tip. And thank you so much for taking the time to share your insights and your wisdom and your joy, and that amazing joy tip. It's just a fantastic joy tip, Anne.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much indeed, Anne.
All right. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.